Welcome to Central Missouri Alumni Stories. I'm your host, Cory Bittner. On this show, we talk with alumni from the University of Central Missouri, and we ask them to tell their stories. Today, we are joined by Eric Hughey. Eric is the founder of the GenWhy Leaders Podcast, and he is also a media account executive at Informa. All right, thank you, Eric. Thanks for being here today.
Sure, yeah, thanks for having me. This will be a lot of fun.
I appreciate you coming on. Eric also has not only the undergraduate experience from the University of Central Missouri, but also the MBA experience. So we're going to pick his brain a little bit about that today. And then we're going to get into a conversation around the podcast that you started, why you started it, who your demographics are, who it's for. Because I think it's exciting, obviously, and I think it seems like you've lined up a lot of guests and have had a lot of great guests on and are having good conversations that I think probably a lot of people in the audience for this show, whether you're watching or listening to this, will appreciate, and you might be interested in checking it out also. But to just kind of get us started, Eric, as far as the road to UCM for you for undergrad, first off, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Lee Summit, Missouri, which if most of your listeners or viewers are from UCM and went to UCM, they're probably familiar with Lee Summit being a stone's throw away.
Sure. Yeah. How did you end up at UCM?
So both my parents went to UCM, and that's how they met and got married. And then one of my two brothers actually went there as well. So it was always kind of on my radar, so to speak, just from that. But then it also had the program I wanted in broadcast media, is why I originally sought it out, and that's how I wound up at UCM. Okay, so strong family ties.
Yeah, that's exactly. Good. Yeah. So you said your mom and dad both went to school there. They got they met there.
Yep, they got married.
And were then married thereafter.
Yep, right after their senior year. My dad was a Sig Ep, and my mom was a Delta Zeta.
Okay, nice. Now, did they grow up in the Kansas City area?
Somewhat, within Missouri for sure. My mom grew up in Cameron, Missouri, which is up north, and then my dad grew up in Boonville, which is further out on I-70, closer to Columbia.
Okay, nice. Now for you personally, was it ever a choice to go somewhere else? Did you ever consider somewhere else?
Yep, so as I mentioned, I had a strong interest in broadcast media, so UCM was really well known for its program, and then Northwest Missouri State, the Bearcats up north in Maryville, had a very well-known program as well. So I was kind of choosing between those two, and ultimately UCM just had a better fit. It was a little closer to home. Kind of felt like the D1 campus and atmosphere, but a D2 classroom size.
Sure. Now, did you end up graduating with a broadcast media degree?
I did, yeah. So broadcast media major, and then almost public relations major as well. Whenever I see Tricia Hansen-Horn, who's a professor in the UCM PR program, she reminds me that I'm one class short of having a PR major. So maybe someday, if they're watching, they'll give me like an honorary
there you go.
PR major as well.
That's funny. That close to the double major there.
Yep.
What from your time, particularly during undergrad, or I guess when you went off as a broadcast media student and ultimately graduated with that degree, what did you see yourself doing? What did you envision?
Yeah, so growing up, I always told my mom that I wanted to either be Mark McGuire, because I had a strong love for sports and baseball, or Jim Carrey, because I always loved TV production, news production, films, movies, and so just that element of storytelling is really what it was at an underlying level. And gosh, now I'm going down the rabbit hole. Where were we going with this?
No, what did you kind of envision yourself doing when you were?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. So I think the original plan, again, going back to my Jim Carrey point, was to make it someday, in Hollywood, and be a TV or a movie producer or an actor, something like that long term. And so I always enjoyed being in front of the camera. I like entertaining my family and friends and being goofy. So that's kind of that was the original plan. But I realized storytelling from the film sense transitioned well into marketing and communications. So that's kind of the track I went down with PR, and then getting my MBA with a marketing emphasis.
Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad that you brought that up. Just one class short of the PR degree, like we've talked about, broadcast media.
Yeah.
Did you ultimately decide to pursue your MBA right after you graduated? Did you take some time between undergrad and grad school?
I did not proceed it right after, and it was actually another connection to Trisha Hansen-Horn. So Trisha, thank you for...
Lots of shout outs for Dr. Hansen-Horn.
Yeah, for sure.
We both took a lot of her classes. So.
Yeah, she's awesome. But yeah, so she had referred me to the University Relations Department on campus, Office of University Relations, which is essentially the in-house marketing and PR firm for the university, but their clients, so to speak, are
Sure.
The Department of Aviation, the College of Business, athletics, and they serve all of them with their graphic designs, communication, videography, and whatnot. So she had known of an opening there and knew that I had kind of equal experience in videography and writing and communication, having done the PR program. So she recommended me for a GA position in that office, which it did pay for most of my master's.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and so I wasn't really going to pursue a master's because just of the financial burden.
Sure.
Original plan was to, yes, maybe go back one day, but have a employer do it down the road. But when this kind of fell into my lap and Hansen-Horn recommended it for me, I just couldn't turn it down.
That's great. Now, did that all materialize your senior year?
Yep. So I think it was probably midway through my senior year. I interviewed spring, probably February or March before, that end semester where I graduated, and knew that I had the position before summer even started. So things worked out for sure.
Nice. Now, when you were going through, or I guess preparing for that, well, actually, let me back up. How long is that program?
The MBA program?
Mm-hmm.
It was 2 years.
Okay, so it's 2 years then.
Mm-hmm.
And what was your first job out of college, or your first job after you graduated?
Yeah, so I was a marketing coordinator at a law firm here in Kansas City called Lathrop Gage. They have 10 offices coast to coast, LA to Boston, and really got to apply all of my communication skills, both broadcast media and PR. Did some video work, a little bit of video editing, but primarily was kind of that typical corporate comm work, internal newsletters, press releases, media pitching, things like that.
Okay, good. Now, but before we move on to kind of your career now, I wanted to talk about your time in Warrensburg, right?
Yeah.
So you were there for, I guess, 6 years?
6 years straight through, yeah. Hard to believe.
That's good for you. Are there any, what are some of your fondest memories from your time there?
Oh, gosh.
Educational, extracurricular, whatever it might be.
Yeah, 6 years is a long time. That's a lot of memories to pull from.
I bet.
But I would say just in general, the freshman year on campus and in the dorms is such a big transitional year for young people, as far as being on your own for once and making your own schedule and not having anyone to answer to a certain degree.
Sure.
And so just going there kind of solo, I didn't really go with a lot of friends. So just having the opportunity to meet new people on my floor and develop those relationships, and a lot of which I still have today, was really rewarding, just to build those and see those come to fruition.
Sure, and as an aside, that was for me, that I had very much the same experience. While there were probably a few more friends that I had that I graduated high school with when we all went off together to college. Yeah. Everybody stayed close, but kind of went their own way too, and made a lot of new friends. And I totally agree that I do think as more online classes and online education are just becoming more, moving more toward the forefront. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. It's probably a good thing. I do feel, though, personally, that just the sort of academic experience of going off to college, being on a college campus, being on your own, kind of learning and growing into that, I think was such a transformative experience for me, and it was such a positive that I hope that exists for a very long time.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it's definitely a transformational period of anyone's life.
Yeah, it is. 18 years old, move away from home, you're off on your own. It seems like people either usually go one way or the other, but either way, it's definitely a very positive experience, one that I'll always have fond memories of for the rest of my life.
Without a doubt, agreed.
Now, one other aside, so your wife, you met at UCM also, right?
Yes, through the PR program. Yeah, we had I think it was a corporate communications class together, and I sat down next to her and just started a conversation, and actually found out through connection I'd worked for her dad previously the semester prior to that, because I was working in the athletic department, and her father's Bob Jackson, who still to this day is the athletic promotions director for athletic department there on campus. And was working press box and doing different stuff, working with him, and so it's kind of funny to see how it come full circle.
Yeah, it is. A good thing you probably had a good relationship with Dad, right?
So yeah, hopefully,
that's important.
Hopefully I was in his good graces by the time she brought up my name.
I'm sure you probably were. Okay, good. So graduated, you were at Lathrop Gage for how long?
Almost 4 years.
Okay, and then the role that you're in now with Informa, if you can just kind of briefly explain what it is that you do there and what Informa is.
Sure, yeah. So Informa is a worldwide B2B or business-to-business media publishing company. It was formerly Penton Media, really well known in the trades, trade publications, but it was recently acquired. Now Informa, it was kind of a three-prong acquisition all at once, acquired Penton and then another company called UBM. So together, all three prongs, so to speak, really are comprised of trade publications, and business media in general. But then Informa had a lot of market research and data, and then UBM brought in a lot of the trade shows and events. So we're this huge, again, global entity that's really dominating the B2B media sector.
Okay, and you've been with Informa in the role that you're in for how long?
Almost 2 years. So I'm a media account executive, which means I'm technically in a publishing role. So I'm on the sales side of advertising. So we, as the thought leaders in the media space, are writing on news and trends in each respective industry. But then what we call solutions providers are larger companies who can provide these solutions to the trends and things going on in the industries are advertisers and want to get in front of our audience to help better promote their products and services. Okay,
that's good. So I would imagine that a lot of your, and from the way that the conversations we've had, a lot of your clients are trade associations.
Trade associations and larger companies,
okay.
Big tool companies. I work within what we call an infrastructure division, so that's anything from like plumbing, HVAC, the power utility industry, heavy equipment rentals, so anything industrious, blue collar, anything ranging from a small mom and pop shop, manufacturing small widgets to a huge engineering firm. Burns and Mac and Black and Veatch are two local companies, and they're very large supporters of ours, so we're thankful for them.
Okay, yeah, that's excellent. Now, can you, so the role that you're in now, like you said, being on the publishing side, more, it's not a dirty word, but on the sales side, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And then you being in, corporate comm, working with Lathrop and Gage, are there any specific, not even necessarily specific examples, but, what can you sort of point to or speak to as far as your education, whether it was undergrad, whether it was the MBA program, that helped kind of prepare you for your career and the roles that you've had and what you're doing now?
Yeah, I think general communication skills, which is probably an elementary thing to say, being that's a PR degree
right.
that we're in. But communication skills for sure. I think it's still to say very underrated, especially as technology increases and communications gets more shorthand. It's an undervalued skill set. And I think sales especially, as far as convincing people to do things, communication is so key. Just again, convincing people to do things and protecting your argument, creating relationships, building trust. So that was huge. Writing and communication in general.
Yeah, that's good. Now, what as far as I would imagine that the MBA program was just sort of like, you had your undergraduate degree and then the MBA program being just, I guess, a deeper dive into the same skill sets, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had realized that I didn't have many business skill sets from a number standpoint, finance, accounting, general business management.
Sure.
And I always knew I had high aspirations to be in leadership, whether that be in a corporation or business or go out into entrepreneurship on my own. So after graduating with 2 majors and both communications driven, I didn't really have a lot of time to squeeze in those business courses, unfortunately. So I really wanted to get well-rounded, but then also dive more into the marketing sector as well.
Okay, good. Now, let's talk a little bit about your pet project, your side project, I guess, that you're working on now. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show how you founded the GenWhy Leaders Podcast, and that's Y as in WHY.
Yes, sir.
Not the letter Y. Why don't you just tell our audience what the show is?
Sure.
And why you decided that this is something you wanted to do?
Yeah. So it's the GenWhy Leaders Podcast. It's an interview-based podcast for millennials to help them and be inspired and become the next generation of business leaders. Big reason why I started that is because of that. I think as a society, as a culture, we're so focused on consumerism, and the next generation of consumers. We're for 5+ years now, people market trends and data has already been pointing to Generation Z, which is the generation after us.
Right.
And giving the best tips of how to connect with them. What social media platforms have you been on? But in my eyes, I think we would be falling short if we didn't help our generation become that next generation of leaders. Businesses are going to fail if there's no leadership and people to take those leadership positions. You might be familiar being in financial services, but there's a term called the silver tsunami,
right.
Which is 10,000 baby boomers are retiring every single day. And so that's just going to create huge market voids, whether they are in corporations or sole proprietors, entrepreneurs within markets. They might be selling their businesses or just closing up shop and being able to retire if they've worked with you,
sure.
Well enough. And so, there's just this kind of void in the market that I see currently, and really just want to help millennials prepare, because I think whether they have aspirations to be in leadership or not, or manage a business and middle management even, some of them are going to have to be. They're going to have to step up, because there's going to be this huge exponential growth curve of openings as more baby boomers retire.
Right, and for what it's worth, adding on to what you said about 10,000 baby boomers per day, I believe that the stats show that that's going to be 10,000 per day for the next 14 years.
Yes.
Which is staggering to think about. It's almost kind of hard to wrap your mind around.
Oh, it is, yeah.
What sort of impact that will have 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So tell me then, so I obviously am a proponent, right, of what it is that you're doing, and what you're talking about and the subject matter. What's the feedback been like? Who are some of the, I guess we don't need to talk about specific guests, but I mean, what kind of demographic? I think I know the demographic, but what kind of people are you bringing on the show? What have you guys been talking about? What are your sort of takeaways, and what have you learned from doing it?
Yeah, all good questions. Demographic is, of course, millennials, and helping them prepare for their careers in the future. Key takeaways have really just been that people are taking action and doing things differently than previous generations. We're not going to be sitting at companies for 40+ years. I think there's a different relationship from employee to employer nowadays. And I think with the internet and so many digital avenues for business, it's really been eye-opening to interview so many people in those realms as far as creating digital businesses and how they support themselves and their families. So it's really eye-opening how people can support themselves and their families.
And it seems to me, just from listening to some of the shows, that there's very much an entrepreneurial nature that so many of the people seem to have.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, it's cool to see. The general threshold for a guest that comes on the show is if they are within a corporation or a business, it's manager and above. And then if they're out on their own, entrepreneur, that they're exactly that, and usually have a business for minimum of 6 months before they would come on the show. And that just having them talk about their experience, I feel like is very beneficial for other people our age who want to be in leadership or have aspirations to start a business.
Right, and I guess I think it's pretty interesting how that entrepreneurial nature of people that are in our generation, they weren't necessarily raised by a generation of people that sort of believed in that. I mean, there's very much. There's plenty of people whose parents had a business, that they started a business, and that's great. But there's, like you said, I mean, as far as the baby boomer generation, there's very much loyalty to your employer. Mm-hmm. Work there for 30 or 40 years, save money, hopefully retire comfortably one day. Maybe you have a pension. Maybe they help subsidize healthcare, whatever it might be. But it's very much different than our generation.
Yeah. I think the internet technology in general is to thank for that, if you will. But just having things like LinkedIn and recruiters contacting any given employee any given day, I think it creates so much more competition than previous generations had, because there's, I think, even 250 plus recruiting firms just in Kansas City. So it's like,
are there really?
Yeah, they have to.
Wow, I believe that though. I guess
they have to create a business and make ends meet for themselves. So their business is kind of stirring the pot, so to speak, and I think that's another component of why there's so much more movement around our generation in terms of career.
Yeah, I hadn't even really thought about the advent of just LinkedIn and somebody being able to log onto that on their computer and pretty much have some other opportunities at their disposal.
Exactly.
People to reach out to about it. So.
Yeah, you get you take what was a local funnel of potential candidates to fill a position, and now you can look nationally, and people are working remotely, so you can the skill set you're looking for in a worker doesn't have to be limited to local reach again, like our previous generations have been.
What's the feedback been from either people you've interviewed, people that have listened to the show? What have other people's thoughts been aside from you and I?
Yeah, it's been really positive, and I'm very thankful for that, because if they weren't, or if I was getting negative reviews, it'd obviously be hard to continue
sure, that's
continue
right.
on with it. So the feedback's been good. They've reinforced the idea that no one's really covering this type of the market or industry or culture or society in general, that again, everyone's focused on the consumer and how are we going to connect and get dollars in our hands, but at the same time you need leadership to be able to strategize and figure that out. So I'm trying to focus on the latter and get people in the right seats.
Have you found that the people that you spoke with, maybe not so much that are the entrepreneurs that have started their own businesses, but the people that you said are sort of at executive levels, do they feel like, and we don't have to use any names or any company specific, but do they feel like exactly what you're talking about is something that their companies desperately need? Yes,
most definitely. I think the talent pool will only continue to widen for millennials. Like we talked about, 10,000 baby boomers every day. So whether they're within a corporation or going out on their own, I think entrepreneurial spirit is huge among our generation, just because technology and the internet, you get to see what's out there, what possibilities are out there, and I think we're one of the first generations to be able to really build and maintain a personal brand, which is a pretty cool concept. Yeah, it really is. Although the the rise of the influencer is kind of it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to say the least. I saw more of an aside that there was some headline today that Kanye West said that, which of course he's going to say something controversial, right? Right. He said that Los Angeles is run by Satan or by demons or something like that, and that the younger generations need to get rid of Instagram and get off the internet and everything else. Which I don't think there's any reversing that trend at this point in time. No going back. I think it's healthy. Like anything, you can make anything a drug and overindulge. So it's always good to limit things and your time with technology, in my opinion. But to your point, we're not going to go backwards. So people definitely need to get in tune with it and educated on how technology and internet and all that works. What you're doing professionally, what you're doing with the podcast, and just kind of thinking about the future. Yeah. I've always joked with guests that, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Is a question that people only ask you when you're like interviewing for your first job out of college. But I kind of want to take that and spin that toward you specifically. I mean, the next 5, 10, 15 plus years, I mean, where do you kind of see things going for you? Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've always been not the best at planning 5 and 10 years out of it. Okay, fair enough. It's difficult for me. So I actually have a yearly goal journal. So I try to plan just 1 year out in advance, things I want to accomplish for the year, what my life looks like at the end of that year. And I think it's really important to, just personally for me, to stay focused on the present moment. I've always been a strong believer that the present moment becomes your future of tomorrow, but also becomes your fond memories of yesterday. So I think staying focused on the moment creates those things that come down the pike in 5 and 10 years. So I haven't cast a vision too broadly of what that looks like. I know I'm motivated to lead others. So if I'm in a position in upper management of the company, or maybe the podcast takes off, right? Sure. Or some other form of entrepreneurship, I just hope to be inspiring others and leading others to be the best versions of themselves. That's good. I like that. When did you start this, the yearly journal goal idea? When did you start that? Where'd you get that idea? Yeah, it started about 3 years ago now. Okay. It's Darren Hardy's journal. He's kind of a big, well-known figure in the self-help space. But it's just a journal called Living Your Best Year Ever, and it kind of walks you through weekly and daily goals to make sure you're on track to take those huge, big, audacious goals and put them in bite-sized chunks. I've had 2 classmates from college that are always focused on success and goal setting. So they've been great influences and great guys to keep in my life and circle of influence. That's Logan Freeman and Brent Vogel. Both have been on my podcast, the first and second episodes, as they rightfully should be. They have achieved a great amount of success, much like you have, in their respective fields. And again, they're a big reason why I have them to thank, for staying on track and pursuing things like this podcast.
That's good.
Yeah.
How's your progress for 2019? I have to ask.
It's going really well. The
last day of the quarter here. We're coming up on the fourth quarter.
Yeah. First goal for the year was to really just make a certain number of in my sales quota for my new job, and I've achieved that. So it's been I guess one check mark, but it's a good feeling.
Well, the quarter to go though, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm blessed in that regard for sure. And then the podcast was really the second overall goal, and it's been going well. I really wanted to start it and have 10 episodes, and as of this week, I've achieved that goal as well. So
excellent.
I guess that puts proof in the journal as far as keeping your goals in front of you regularly and thinking about them and making sure you're staying on track.
That's good. Do you, as far as the podcast, well, really both of the goals that you just said, are, I guess, specifically with the podcast, are you doing pretty much all of it yourself?
Yes, grinding, hustling, or whatever lingo or buzzword you want to give it. I'm definitely doing everything. It's what I've underestimated is just the time commitment.
Sure.
Any type of long form content, whether it's video or strictly audio. You have the interview. Sit down 30 minutes to an hour, and then usually have about 5 times more than that in post-production.
Sure.
And then there's facets around that, the social media channels. I do a lot of graphic design as far as quote cards, trying to promote it on each of those channels. So it's a huge time commitment, and I just hope that someday it pays off. My goal is to get to 100 episodes with the podcast eventually.
Great.
And I figure if it never gets monetized with advertising dollars, then at least I will have networked with 100 peers and millennials in my network, so that'll be an asset in itself.
That's great.
Yeah.
Is there, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that what you would say you found is the biggest challenge out of doing it, is simply the carving out the time for it?
Yeah, most definitely. Right now I'm on a twice a month publishing schedule. I would love to go weekly, but I think until there's a potential advertiser out there who would want to sponsor the podcast, it's just not realistic from a time standpoint for me to be able to publish that quickly on a weekly basis.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you just you keep it up, you prioritize, you know what you're doing.
Yeah,
take
exactly.
Your time and.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. So, anything else as far as the podcast goes that we haven't really covered or that you want to talk about here?
I don't think so. Yeah, appreciate anyone who's interested, and anyone can listen. Welcome all feedback. If there's certain content that you want to hear, or again, a guest that you know of in the Kansas City community or national scale that you think would make a good guest, I'd love to learn about them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So that is going to move us into our next segment, our fun segment here.
All right.
The Mule Minute, as we call it, that's sponsored by Falcon Wealth Advisors. And what I really will do in this segment is just go through a series of questions.
Yeah.
I've told guests that we're going to do it in 60 seconds, but obviously I don't have a stopwatch here. However, I am just interested in hearing kind of what your first response or your first answer, your first thought is to these questions.
Sure.
That I'm going to rattle through. So,
okay.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, we'll start. All right, we'll get going here. First one's easy. What is your favorite destination?
Favorite destination? Wow, that's a good question. This is very lightning round. I'm stumbling over my words too much already. Me and my wife just went to San Diego about this time last year, and it was our first time being there. It was really beautiful, 77 sunny every day, so I'd probably say that place.
I love San Diego.
Yeah.
Second, what's the best way for you to relax or unwind?
I've always enjoyed being on the lake. I grew up in South Lee Summit at Raintree Lake, small suburban lake out there, and I grew up wakeboarding and boating and fishing, so it's favorite pastime, and I think it'll continue to stay that way.
Getting out on the water.
Yeah.
Good. What do you think the Chiefs' record will be this year?
Oh, good question.
Sitting at 4-0 now.
Sitting at 4-0 now. I'm going to say, with 16 games in the schedule, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to say 13-3.
Okay. All right, 13-3.
Is there any wager on this to where we can go back and reference it if I'm right?
We'll see. No. We will see. All right. What if you could travel back in history to any period in time? When would you go back to?
Oh, that's a great question. Man, I mean, it's kind of redundant, but I really like and enjoyed growing up in the 90s. I feel like it was right before technology kind of got too overwhelming and too integrated into our lives. And so I really enjoyed just, riding bikes everywhere as a kid.
Sure.
and having kind of that carefree mentality. So I think that was a cool era to grow up in.
I like it. So you just go back and do it again?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's the first time I've heard that answer.
Yeah.
All right. So retirement, day one. You're retired. What do you do first day?
Hopefully I'm on a lake or within a couple hundred feet of a lake, and I would probably be out on a boat, skiing, wakeboarding, fishing, or just cruising around.
Good. What is one thing that you know now that you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Just to start and to have more courage. I think there's a lot of fear and comparison that happens nowadays with social media, and you get a front row seat to everyone else's lives and careers, and can see what they do. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, there's people out there who are less qualified doing what you want to do, and so I think just to have more courage and to step into things more boldly and take things more head on from the start.
I like that. Okay, if you walked into an establishment and there was a karaoke machine there, and you had to pick up the microphone and sing one song, what song would you sing?
Man, I've been there before. That's probably Toby Keith's "I Should Have Been a Cowboy," because I think it's one of the few songs I can sing straight through.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, if there is one profession that you could try other than your own, what would it be?
Growing up in athletics and always almost playing every sport that this local public schools had to offer. Always enjoyed fitness and exercise, so I think something along the lines of either personal training or maybe even like kinesiology, study of body movement, helping people recover from injuries, things like that, has always fascinated me.
Okay, good. And then lastly, what is one piece of advice that you'd give someone?
One piece of advice. I'd probably go back to my earlier point, not to steal Nike's slogan, but just do it. Whatever you're thinking, whatever your aspirations are, whatever your goals are, just go after it. You don't have to accomplish. Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak. So you don't have to, be overwhelmed by this huge goal that you have. Just take it down into one daily, hourly, minute, bite-sized chunk, and do that first, and then go after the next one. And bite by bite, you'll eat the elephant.
That's good. So just get started, right? Just do it. I like that. Okay, good. All right, you did good. That wasn't too bad, right?
Yeah. Sweating bullets every game.
Okay, good. Well, I appreciate you participating. So
sure, yeah.
It's always a fun segment for us to do. So the last question that I have for you today, it pertains to something that we talk here on our team, right? Or with my group, Falcon Wealth Advisors, and our team, and we have a different show we'll bring guests on, but something that we always ask people that we're just interested in learning about is what is the first lesson that you can remember in which you learned about money?
Probably buying my first car, truck rather. I bought a Chevy Silverado, and I remember just talking through the process with my parents, and they had encouraged me enough. To that point, I had a summer job grooming baseball fields during the summers, and so I'd made a decent amount of money doing that. So I had the money saved, but just their encouragement through that process to always be stashing your 10% away for the things you need in life, and a car is one of those things that you need in your life to get you from A to B.
Yep. That's good prioritized saving, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good lesson to learn. So
yeah.
Okay, well, good. Well, thanks again, Eric. I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and talk.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Today.
Thank you. Yeah.
No, of course. Just as a reminder for our audience, whether you are watching or if you're listening, if you're watching the show, you can search for Central Missouri Alumni Stories on YouTube, and you want to make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes as they come out. As far as the podcast goes, you can find it anywhere where you get your podcast, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple or Google or elsewhere. You can search for Central Missouri Alumni Stories and make sure that you subscribe. And I, of course, am on social media. My probably preferred medium that I use is Twitter. So you can find me at Cory Bittner KC is my handle on there. Or, of course, you can email me, and that's Cory@FalconWealthAdvisors.com. Thank you all again for tuning in and for listening and watching. We hope that you enjoyed the most recent episode here, and we hope that you have a great day.